Hey vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I'm doing a video on Veterans Day. So in commemoration and in gratitude for the great sacrifices made by so many Americans who served in our armed forces, I'd like to talk a little about one of the bands who 4 out of the 6 members were veterans when they formed this band. That would be the Marshall Tucker Band out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And Marshall Tucker Band formed after 4 of their members had gotten out of the military. Most of the members were born right between like 1948 and 1950, so they were in their early 20s when the band formed. When they were in high school and soon after getting out of high school, they were in various bands in the Spartanburg area. Lots of different people, uh, different bands were formed and members traded in and out, so on and so forth. One of the best bands was one called the Toy Factory, which was headed up by Toy Caldwell. And sometimes it included his brother, Tommy. And now the 4 members, and after their service in the military, they came back to their hometown area of Spartanburg, South Carolina, and eventually the Marshall Tucker Band, emerged from the various bands that had been formed during that time. Now, Toy and his brother Tommy Caldwell both were in the Marine Corps, and Toy was wounded in Vietnam, and he received the Purple Heart. Actually, had to go for some hospitalization for his wound, and was patched up and had to go back into Vietnam to continue his tour, fighting on his tour. So he saw action in Vietnam. Tommy, I believe, was in the Marines as well. Don't know if he was ever stationed in Vietnam. He may well have been. The lead singer for Marshall Tucker is Doug Gray, and Doug Gray was in the Army and served in Vietnam in the Army. And the 4th member, George McCorker, here, rhythm guitarist, he was in the Navy. All of them in their old, roughly 67, 68, 69, in that time frame, which would have been, around the time they were 19 or 20 years old. Some were drafted and some volunteered. Of course, during that period, a lot of people joined when they got their draft number, before they got a draft notice. If you had a low number, the odds were that your name would be pulled and you would have been drafted into the military. So a lot of times, if you had a low number, you might go ahead and enlist, saying, try to get in one branch or the other that you thought would be the best fit for you, rather than being totally dependent on whatever the draft board decided. Now, it's important to know not everybody that was in the service during that Vietnam War era and in the different branches, not everybody went to Vietnam. There were lots of. I had a friend that was a few years older than me. He was in the Army, and he served all his time in Germany. He never was sent to Vietnam, so not everybody went to Vietnam. But anyway, when those 4 gentlemen came back, they formed the Marshall Tucker Band along with Jerry Eubanks and Paul Riddle. So there's an example of veterans making great music. members of the Marshall Tucker Band. 4 of the 6 were veterans. Of course, as I say, we want to express. I want to express my thanks to all those who served in the military. I was born in 1958. The draft ended just before, a couple of years before I turned 18 and had to register. In fact, I never registered for the draft. There was a short period of a year or two where they ended the draft and they ended registration for the draft. And I fell into that category. And after a couple of years, 18 and olders once again had to register for the draft, but there was no draft involved. So we have an all-volunteer Army now. But during that period in our history, it was a draft during much of that period, the golden age of vinyl. I would like to. I think about growing up as a kid. I still have a friend. Don't see him anymore. He's living far away. I had a friend, and his dad was killed in Vietnam. He when we were in like second, third, fourth grade, something like that. The story I had heard was that they were on a patrol and were being pursued, and my friend Johnny's father sent the patrol on ahead and waited and fought it out in order to give the rest of the men time to reach safety, to escape, and he was killed. But, those stories are abundance. I will tell you one more quick little story to highlight the bravery that we see from people in times of war sometime. Now, there's a Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem has a basketball arena called the Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And we'd always watching basketball games on television and stuff. They'll talk about we're at Joel Coliseum for tonight's game. And I always figured Lawrence Joel was some big rich guy that contributed a lot of money to Wake Forest University athletics or something. Well, that's not the case. Lawrence Joel was born in, let's see, 28, 38, 48, born in 1928 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He was the third of 16 children. And when he turned 18 in 1946, he joined the Merchant Marines, and he served a year in the Merchant Marines. When he got out of the Merchant Marines, he decided to join the U.S. Army. He joined the U.S. Army and served in combat in the Korean conflict. He was a medic, and he had risen to the rank of sergeant sometime in the early 60s, and he was with a paratrooper division as one of their medics when the forces went out in pursuit of the Viet Cong in a place called Vinh Yang, South Vietnam. And they went out into the jungle and were ambushed by forces of the Viet Cong that outnumbered them 6-1. Well, Lawrence Joel began rendering medical care to the fallen troops out there, and the front of this in this attack was almost everybody was either dead or wounded, and he's running around in the front lines trying to save people's lives, and he was under constant fire. In fact, he was ordered to stay on the ground. The fire was so intense, and he defied those orders to continue to render aid. This battle lasted for 24 hours. when he ran out of, well, before he ran out, but he was, sometime during the early hours of the battle, he was shot in the leg. And then he got shot in the leg, the same leg, a second time, a little bit later. He treated his wounds, gave himself a shot of morphine, made himself a crutch, a crude crutch of some sort, and continued to treat the wounded. He eventually ran out of medical supplies, and another soldier, Randy Erks, I believe was his name. He worked with him, and Randy would run ahead of Lawrence Joel, giving him cover, firing cover, and Lawrence Joel ran from place to place, rendering aid and searching out for more medical supplies because he was completely out. So he's gathering up medical supplies under heavy fire, and during this little period, he saved 13 men's lives, including one whose chest was blown just open. And he did not have the supplies he needed, but he used some plastic. He found some plastics. I don't know what he found, but something plastic. And he covered the wound and sealed the wound up in plastic in order to save that particular soldier's life. He was holding up the IV bags, kneeling with the soldiers, holding up IV bags, constantly shouting encouragement to the soldiers to hang in there. I'm coming to help you. Keep fighting, because they were being overrun. Keep fighting. This went on for 24 hours, and Lawrence Joel stayed there the entire time with two wounds, and rendered there's no telling how many people's lives he saved. This was November 8th, 1965, and he spent 2 months in hospitals in Saigon and Tokyo for his wounds, and then went back into his service. He would end up retiring with about 26 or 27 years in the military. He retired in 1973. In 1967, the guy that helped him during a portion of this time, Randy Ernst, he was given the Silver Star and the Purple Heart. Lawrence Joel was given the Purple Heart, Silver Star, and the Congressional Medal of Honor. In 1967, President Lyndon Johnson presented him with Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was the first living African American to receive that honor since the Spanish-American War in 1898. So the first living African American to receive Congressional Medal of Honor in the 20th century. He was the first medic in the war in Vietnam to receive Congressional Medal of Honor. And a few years later, they named this Coliseum in honor of him. There's a street by a military hospital, and I forget which one. It is Joel Lane or something like that, named after him. There are two facilities, medical type facilities, not the main hospital, but parts of the hospitals named in his honor. One at Fort Bragg near me here in North Carolina, and one at Fort Benning, Georgia. So in 1984, only 11 years after he retired at age 55, Lawrence Joel died of complications from diabetes. But that's the type of bravery. It makes you wonder, would you be able to even come anywhere close to that type of bravery were you thrust into that situation? I dare say most of us would. What a brave man. What a tribute to our country Lawrence Joel. So veterans, thank you for your service. Remember, everybody, be kind to your neighbors, because we're all neighbors. And tell a veteran thanks.